What's up, guys? Leyton here for UFC Gambling Addicts. The South Carolina card was a very, very, very decent card. A lot of profit on that card, um, which was followed by one of the worst days of my life. My dog, my best friend, she had to be put down. So still, it's very raw to me. So if I seem a bit off in this podcast at any point, just bear with me this week. And enjoy the breakdown as always. I appreciate you all, guys.
And welcome to episode 35 of UFC Addicts. My name is Aaron, and as always, I'm here with my co-host Leyton, and we are here to break down the latest card. We are breaking down UFC on ESPN for Junior Dos Santos versus Francis Ngannou from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Fun fact, UFC 35's main event was Jens Pulver versus BJ Penn. Jens Pulver won that by decision after 5 rounds. I'm sure you all remember that one. Anyways, as always, here's my co-host Leyton. What up, buddy? And do you like the new addition to the intro?
That was beautiful. You know, you should do that every week. Fun little fact. Looking at the South Carolina card before we jump into this one, there were some decent performances. Molly McCann was impressive. Ashley Yoder and Siri Kondo both went in -110. It became very clear very quickly that Ashley Yoder should have been like a -250. Just a decent card all round. Andre Ewell, Randy Brown, and the co-main. What can you say?
Yeah, and the main event, obviously, and you're burying the lead, Mr. Humble here, I'll say it. You went 4-0 on our disagreements this week. That means I had 0 of the 4 fights correct that we disagreed on. You had all 4. So at this point, you're up 14 fights now. I can't even get a whole card disagreed right and be tied. But that's okay because around the Stipe and Francis. The Stipe DC 2 fight coming up here in August. We're going to be starting season 2 of our rankings and keeping track of our fighters or our fight records and everything. So that matters to me at least. I don't know if it matters to anybody else. But yeah, the main event and co-main event both great. Shout out to you for getting the co-main event. Randy Brown looked excellent and to really rebound from pretty devastating loss, and Barberena is going to be off for a while now. 2 3-round wars ending in a KO is not the way to create longevity, that's for sure.
I was very surprised that Randy Brown got the finish. Like, I took a small little 10 or 15 pound single on a Randy Brown decision, and he finished a couple parlays, I believe. I just chucked that out there, and it was close to happening, but you got to give credit to Randy Brown. Like, to finish a hard, tough guy like Barberena, that was just so impressive. And the main event, man, like, oh, man. Like, has anyone got any news if Renato Moicano is alive? Like, Jesus, he got cracked.
He almost got full Nelson'd.
Yeah, and the ref gave him, like, if you had a bet on Zombie, you must have been sat there like, this ref is giving this guy every single chance in the world. Like, that could have been stopped quite a little bit before.
And it was stopped in 58 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he cracked him, bro. He cracked him so hard. Like, his head was like
yeah, go ahead.
His head was like one of those, those things that you can, like, I don't know what it's called. Like, you can pull them back and they just fling back. Yeah. Yeah, his head just bounced one side and it came back quicker, and it was he got cracked, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Korean Zombie could easily be 7-0 in his last 7 without a couple of fluke losses here. He was worse than Cowboy odds, and another main event incorrect for me. The Black Magic appears to be back, apologize in advance to whoever I pick against in the whoever I pick in the main event, because this is a heavyweight fight, so I always feel bad. These fights, they get hit a little bit harder sometimes, and I am not so sure we're going to be seeing 5 rounds in this fight, regardless of the winner. I'll say that.
So, it's a good card. I'm looking forward to breaking it down.
Yeah, and before we jump in, I just want to give a real side shout out. We may have a few new listeners this week, and I was over at Multiplex Movie Trivia. It's over on YouTube, and it's basically just a movie trivia YouTube site. You go up against a YouTube series, you go up against another opponent, and I won't spoil mine, but I was the 31st ranked fighter, or whatever you want to call it, player out of 32, and I was facing the 2 seed. So, chance, I'll say that much, but definitely shout out to my opponent, Sean. He is listening, and he's a big MMA fan, so
So in other words, you know what it's like to be Jessica I.
I mean, I was trying to think. Yeah, I think that is exactly what I said after it happened. So that's not giving away. That is pretty much giving it away. But most of you probably aren't going to check it out. But I wanted to give a shout out to Multiplex.
Yeah. Shout out to you, movie guys.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description if you so happen to be interested in, or if you've ever watched something like the Schmodown. It's similar to that. So I understand that means nothing to you, Leyton.
I'd watch your one, bro. Your episode. I'll watch it. I'll check your movie knowledge.
Yeah, it was legit, and it was good to compete, and gave me a little bit of an insight, a very small insight into how much easier it is to critique as opposed to participate. Of what it is. So, anyways, I'm sure that bored some people, but this is part of the podcast. You're going to get to know us along the way. We keep it passionate, though, and let's jump into our first fight at flyweight. Here, I'm just kidding. It's at heavyweight. I know. It was a little joke I was making.
I really let it there.
Thank you. It is between Junior Baby Albini and Maurice, the crochet master, I believe, Greene.
Yeah.
I will be breaking down Baby Albini. I'm not going to call him Junior Albini. I'll call him Baby Albini. The 27-year-old who looks like he's going on 45. 14-5 overall, 6 TKOs and 6 submissions. That seems great. 1-3 in the UFC. He hasn't won since his debut, where he TKO'd Timothy Johnson, who at the time that looked pretty impressive. He followed that up with losses to Arlovsky, to Alexei Oleinik, and to Rosenstruck in his last fight. He was choked out by Oleinik. He was decided by Andrei Arlovsky, and he was knocked out by Rosenstruck. So basically, at this point, I would say Albini's best known for his attire. He was known for basically wearing a diaper in the UFC for one of his fights. Other than that, he's been, I think, average would be a compliment for him. I think he does have some decent attributes. I like his speed. I think he has some decent power. He showed a well-rounded first round, but then against Rosenstruck, he got him taken down, but then he seemed gassed by the second. So I'm not sure if his conditioning's all that great. He does cut to 265, and he doesn't look like one of the bigger guys frame-wise. And I think this is a good opportunity for Greene, coming off a really good-looking debut. So I'm going to take Greene to establish that range. He's going to have a 6 to 7 inch reach advantage. And I think he'll definitely have the cardio advantage and the speed advantage. So he's just got to keep Albini off him, and I think he does. And I think replicates the Rosenstruck win and gets a second round TKO from Maurice, the Crochet King Greene.
That was a beautiful breakdown, and I agree with pretty much everything you said there. Maurice Greene, 1-0 inside the UFC. Debut against Jeff Hughes. I took him in that debut. He was a plus 220 underdog. And he's a very decent kickboxer for the heavyweight division. Also has good jiu-jitsu himself. Yeah, everything you said is pretty much spot on. So yeah, how can you really go against him here? You know, if I took him against Jeff Hughes, you know, Albini is, I think we'd all agree, make or break for him. He's like 1-3 now in the UFC. So potentially fighting for his job. So yeah, I'll take Maurice Greene, but I'll take him via decision.
Okay, I think that's the argument, is that it's with more of a desperation, which does bring out the best in some fighters. I always have to think of Diakise.
There we go.
The Akisi effect. There's just It's amazing through this first year on this podcast how there's just these obscure random fighters that have just created real moments for us. Like Austin Arnett, we'll never forget him.
Yeah.
We'll never be yelling at the end of the third round.
That was the funniest thing.
I'm sorry. I hope other people can remember that fight because it was just so great of a moment that just like MMA just creates a lot of these moments. But either way, going to the odds here, I'm pretty, I don't know, I'm pretty surprised. We'll see what you think. Maurice Greene is the favorite at minus 140, so plus 110 for junior.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine by me. You could even have, like, this could be another case where, you know, minus 140, but after 2 or 3 minutes, you know, it could have even been minus 2. That, you know, I really think Maurice Greene is going to have a good second fight here in the UFC. So minus 140, I'd get on that pretty early.
And the other thing about Greene's debut that was impressive was against a guy who had previously beat him in a 5-round fight. So
Exactly.
It was a split, but I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was pretty poorly scored.
The third round was very close. I think the fact that Maurice dropped him at one point was a big factor.
Yeah, I picked Hughes, and I thought that Greene had won the fight. So either way, we agreed to start out here. I think Greene, if he was debuting against Albini, would be maybe another story. But I think that it being his second fight here, he's had a couple other fights in the octagon with being on The Ultimate Fighter. And so, yeah, I think that Greene gets the TKO. So you think decision, but we do agree. You want to move us on to the next fight?
Okay, so we have Emily Whitmire versus Amanda Ribas, or how the Brazilians would say, Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas comes into this fight 6-1 as a pro. I've watched a few of her fights, and she mainly looks like a striker. Her only loss coming to Poliana Viana, and that was the Brazilian girl that lost to Hannah Cyphers recently. And she actually stopped Ribas in that fight. She caught her and stopped her. Looking at Whitmire too, she's not too impressive. She had an impressive win in her last fight. It was a very quick submission. But yeah, both girls, you know, I could bring up fact after fact for both girls and compare both girls, but in my eyes, all facts aside, this is really a 50-50 fight for both girls. Amanda Ribas could win this, Whitmire could win that. It's a tough one. If I had to make a real decider, it would be Emily Whitmire has fought better competition. She's probably going to be more well-rounded and more prepared. But it's really 50-50. I'll take Whitmire via decision.
Yep, that's a pretty fair breakdown. Okay, Emily Whitmire, 4-2 now. She's got her first finish in her last fight against a woman who hadn't fought in over 2 years, who was, I believe, like a fitness instructor in Albu, who I picked against her. She showed pretty good overall skills in her debut, in her other performance against Jamie Moyle. I think that, I don't know, she got KO'd by Roxanne Modafferi, but that was at flyweight. So this is at strawweight, but I think that she has shown at times that her striking is not the sharpest or quickest. And so I think that's Ribas's chance in this fight. And it's actually what I'm going to take, is I'm going to take Ribas to be able to establish her striking and hurt Emily Whitmire, keep it on the feet, and grind out a decision. So not even grind out, avoid the grind and gut out a decision, I guess I should say.
Yeah, that's a fair
Yeah, it's a coin flip, and honestly, I think that the odds are going to be way too much with Whitmire based on a performance that we didn't really get to see how good Whitmire is. We got to see when she hurts someone, she can pull them away with a rear naked choke. That's good. Yeah. I mean, I think most fighters can do that, but a lot of times these quick finishes where we really don't see the fighter's game plan, ability to come back from adversity, true skill sets, it's not always this great thing. It is impressive, and for the fighter themselves, it's great to get out of there right away. But it isn't always the best thing for the fighter, and it isn't always indicative. And a lot of times you see a result with the odds being ridiculous in their next fight. So I am kind of taking into account that I anticipate the odds being heavily with Whitmire here.
Mm-hmm.
So
it is a 50-50, and if we get a big dog here either way, it's definitely worth betting on. Even if you put like £5 or £10 on a decision for the underdog.
This is why you want to be around when the line's open sometimes, because it opened at plus 240 for Amanda Ribas. Amanda Ribas is now plus 135.
Well, there you go.
So there you go. I was too late. Emily Whitmire opened at minus 300 favorite. She is now where she should be, minus 165. That's fair enough. I think it should be about the same as Maurice Greene Albini, frankly.
Or even man, you could even, this is so 50-50. This is more of a case for Siri Kondo and the Ashley Yoda, where they were both minus 110.
That really didn't make sense to
exactly.
me, but then it really didn't, even before the fight. Either way, I think that it opened, man, plus 240. I would have loved to get Ribas at plus 240. Oh, well, I wasn't there when it opened. So we'll move it on at plus 135, mild value, but I think that it's probably a pass on for me, betting wise.
We'll just see where the line goes all week.
Yeah, so I'll move us on to this is at 205.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure both these guys have fun at heavyweight. So it's between Dalka, or as he goes by, Champion Lungiambula, and he is facing the UFC vet in Justin Ledet. I'll be breaking down Champion Lungiambula. I'll just call him Champion, or Dalka, because that last name I'm not quite sure on yet. So Dalka, 33 years old. He is 9-1 overall. 4 TKOs and a submission, making his UFC debut here. As I say, he goes by Champion. Coming off a hard-fought 5-round split decision win at heavyweight against a veteran who was 19-3, and really trying to grapple throughout the fight. So props to Dalka for being able to deal with the bigger, taller guy, and didn't appear to be out-muscled. So Champion looks to have really good wrestling and striking. He is on the shorter end for the weight class, but I think it allows him to really get the torque, and he swings like Mike Tyson, with that torque and just really short, compact swings. Obviously, his reach is going to be one of his disadvantages, but he's been able to put away guys at different points in the fight, which is always something I look for. He has first round finishes, second and third round. And I think he's kind of being given a potential showcase here in his debut. And I think he gets the first round KO. I just have not been impressed with Ledet since his debut win at heavyweight, where he boxed up, I think, Chase Sherman. And I really was excited after that fight. He had smooth boxing and looked real good on his feet. And since then, I get he's fought some tough guys in Rakic and Johnny Walker. And I'm not saying Dalka is that, but he also has been finished and affected by both those guys. So I'll take the newcomer, and I'll take the first round KO. I'll go for it.
Decent. Okay, so Justin Ledet comes into this fight 3 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. I was actually at his fight in Germany where Rakic was making his debut and completely outclassed Ledet. Just looked really good that night. And like you said, he fought a tough guy in Johnny Walker, where he was pretty much TKO'd very quickly. Your breakdown of Dolce is pretty spot on from what I've seen. I will say his judo is so decent. When he's in the clinch, his judo is very, very decent. And also a big power puncher, like you said. His explosions are very decent. And I would pretty much agree that this debut could be a showcase fight for him. Justin Ledet hasn't looked good in his last 2 fights. You did highlight they are tough guys. But Dolce could be a tough guy, from what we've seen. So yeah, I can't disagree here. I'd take Dolce, and I'm going to take him exactly how you took him. I'm going to take a round one TKO.
Yeah, and I'm surprised the odds are close here. Minus 130 for Dolce, plus 100, so even for Ledet.
That's really nice. I love that.
So yeah, I think putting Dolce at a KO, that definitely will get you some decent money.
hmm And
Um,
and before we move on to the next one,
yeah,
just as you said that, Luis Pena, 4-1 TKO, and he finally did it.
yeah, somehow, some way they gave it to him.
hmm
All right, we're moving on. I don't want to talk about him anymore.
Steak fight next.
Yeah, this is the steak fight, and absolute steak fight here. Between Jared Gordon and Dan Moret. I'm not giving either one nicknames for this one. Sorry. So Jared, this is there are sometimes I just see a matchup I'm just not excited for. I hope that I'm wrong here. Jared Gordon, 14-3 overall, 6 TKOs, 2 submissions. He is 2-2 in the UFC with wins over Michel Quinones and Hecron Diaz. And he got TKO'd by Diego Ferreira, one of my favorites. And he got TKO'd in the third round in his last fight against Joaquim Silva. I nailed that one all the way through with a KO and third round, I predicted. So patting myself on the back, it feels good. Gordon is basically a solid featherweight fighter who I guess is stronger on the feet. He's got good boxing, competent ground game, but I'm not sure that's where he wants this fight to be heading. I think athletically and physically is where you can overwhelm him, but I just don't see Moret being the guy to capitalize on that. Hopefully the weight cut's smooth, but I'll take Gordon, and I'll take him by second round TKO.
Nice. Okay, so Dan Moret
Just
comes.
hoping it gets over before the 15 minutes, I'll be honest.
Dan Moret, 0-2 now inside the UFC. I actually took him in his last fight against Alex White, and that was a very decent fight. He lost a decision, but overall it was a decent performance from Dan Moret. Looked fairly good that night. But if you take a look at his whole career, he's beat some guys that aren't too impressive, but the guys he's lost to, Luke Sanders, Bobby Moffett, Rayani Barcelos, Gilbert Burns, and Alex White. So to me, it feels like the upper, higher level of mixed martial artists is, just too much of a struggle for Dan Moret. And that kind of goes back to what I said. He'd lost against Alex White, but he looked fairly decent, but he still lost. So the question to me is Jared Gordon a part of that higher level of mixed martial artists? And you look at the last 2 fights he's had.
Mid-tier level.
Mm-hmm.
You got Alex White got to fight. Okay, don't put Alex White in the higher level, please don't.
Well, looking at the guys Dan Moret's beat, they're lesser of Alex White. So this is what I'm trying to say.
Is Gordon better than Alex White? That's what you have to answer for yourself, yes. I guess.
So looking at the last 2 fights Jared has had, not really. He does his own thing, his cardio, his pressing, and he's been finished. But here's the thing: if you can keep up with Jared Gordon, you get the finish. But if you don't keep up with Jared Gordon looks like Jared Gordon. He has a decent night at the office. So It's really a question, can Dan Moret keep up with the pace and pressure of Jared Gordon? I'm going to say no. I think Jared Gordon's pressure and pace is going to be a little bit too much for Dan Moret. Like I said, he could still perform well and lose, and that's probably what I'm going to anticipate here. So I'll take Jared Gordon via decision.
Okay, fair enough. These are interesting odds. Minus 350 for Jared Gordon.
That's insane. That's wow.
Plus 265 for Moret.
That's wow. If anyone wants to pick Dan Moret, I have no argument. Other than, the pace is going to be too much. But value-wise and betting-wise, if you want to pick someone who, Jared Gordon isn't a 99% pick here. And those are insane odds.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm about as sure of that one as I am about Ribas winning, so not
Yeah,
sure at
I'd
all.
agree.
So go ahead and move us on to our next fight here at 145.
Okay, so we have your boy Jordan Griffin versus now Vince Murdock. Who am I breaking down here? Vince Murdock, of course. Jordan's your boy. Vince Murdock comes into this fight 12 wins, 3 losses as a pro. Training out of Team Alpha Male. I've watched a few of his fights. He isn't great, but he isn't the worst. Doesn't exactly stand out in any area. Um, I believe Jordan Griffin's going to have like an 8-inch reach advantage. He's taller. He's fought better competition. The only real worry I'd have here for Jordan Griffin is he gets a little reckless at times and throws some high kicks, and he can get caught that way. I've seen that in a few of his fights. But like I said about Vince Murdock, he really doesn't stand out anywhere. He's a decent puncher. So if you're giving him like a puncher's chance, I'd say he's got a good puncher's chance. But yeah, I went against Jordan Griffin in the Dan Ige fight, and Dan Ige won, and then he beat another one of your boys, in Kevin
Yeah,
Aguilar. So,
you get.
but yeah, I was impressed with Jordan Griffin in the Dan Ige fight, to be honest. So I'd be surprised here if he got caught by Vince and lost. I pretty much expect Jordan Griffin to beat Vince Murdock pretty much everywhere. So yeah, I'll take Jordan Griffin via. I'm going to take a submission in round 2.
Okay. I will be breaking down Jordan, the native psycho, Griffin, Rufus Sport. The 28-year-old is 17-6, 5 TKOs, 8 submissions. He is 0-1 with a loss to Dan Ige. Thanks for the reminder. Dana White Contender Series winner, so take a shot of your apple juice there at home. He won by rear naked choke in the first round there. He's got a really good range of strikes. He's a southpaw, uses that straight left to catch a lot of his opponents and finish them. So overall, his striking's good. And also, I like that he took his time to get to the UFC. Even though he did lose his debut, I think he did better than Aguilar in that fight, frankly. He sometimes leaves his neck a little out there for submissions, things like that, which can worry me with a alpha male wrestler. I think they're all good at guillotines, and I think he's got to be cognizant of that. I think that his submission game's totally legit too. So once he hurts you, a lot of times he looks to finish you on the ground. So I think this is going to be finished in the 3rd round by Griffin. I think it could get really bloody, and I think Griffin takes him into deep waters and puts him away in the 3rd by TKO. So
Nice.
I like this matchup. Vince Murdock, I think, could be a decent guy. I think he could use his wrestling and possibly ground Griffin for the fight, but I'm betting on the range, the movement of Griffin. So I think it's a good one. I think it's a good fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Mr. Griffin does. I'm seeing him at minus 230 favorite, plus 180 for Vince Murdock. Although over at Westgate in Las Vegas, it's a plus 110 for Jordan Griffin right now.
Whoa.
So I'm not sure if that's a misprint, but according to OddsShark, it is a plus 110 for Jordan Griffin at Westgate, Las Vegas.
So you think he's going to get a TKO? I think he's going to get a sub. That's a green flag for me to put that fight in a parlay, with that fight not to go with distance. So yeah, that's a decent one. The odds are a little bit high for Jordan Griffin at minus 230, I think you said. It could be a little bit lower, but
I'm okay with it, actually.
Yeah, you're okay with it. It could be a little closer to the ballpark for me, but I'm happy to still take Jordan Griffin though.
Yep, fair enough. I'll move us on to fight at, 205?
205.
Okay, between... He's your boy, not my boy, Eric Anders. And this Vinicius, let's see, Moreira?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sweet. I will be breaking down your boy, Eric Anders. what to really say about Eric Anders at this point. 11-4. He is best known, I think, at this point for his short notice performance against Thiago Santos, and also for being a former college football player, and as a result, often gets some pretty crazy lines. So I'm not saying what his line is yet, but he's currently on a 3-fight losing streak. Those coming against Khalil Roundtree, Elias Theodorou, and Thiago Santos. Theodorou got a split. Roundtree got a dominant decision win. And almost might as well have had 10-7 in this fight. Eric Anders, yeah, his overall strengths are hard to really point out at this point, I guess, for me. Mm-hmm. He's not a great wrestler. He's a decent wrestler. He's a good athlete. He's a decent striker. But even against Tim Williams in the fight where he got the head kick finish, it took until the third round, and Tim Williams was hanging in there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Tim Williams is not anything of real note. Yeah, I think that the thing is Vinicius Moreira could not have looked less impressive in his debut. Just looks slow, plodding footwork, not great entries for his takedowns, not super sophisticated striking. So, honestly, this fight is a who the hell knows fight for me. It's just, I think that it isn't an easy fight for Vinicius. I think Eric Anders has fought better competition, and he'll have the better footwork in this fight, hopefully. So I guess I'll take your boy by decision, but I'm sorry, there's just a few fights on this card I'm not very confident in.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel you.
I'm not going to hide behind it and say I am, and this is one of them. If Vinicius goes out there and wins, I wouldn't be shocked.
Mm-hmm. I feel you.
I'll take your boy, but I want him to show me something in this fight, and I'm just not sure he has a real weight class and a real strength as a MMA fighter. Mm-hmm. No offense. I know it sounds good.
Okay, so Vinicius Moreira comes into this fight 0-1 inside the UFC. He also fought on the Contender Series in Brazil, where he got a submission win, and I'm pretty sure he broke that guy's arm before he got a submission win. Yep. He puts him in a terrible position where it looks like his arm is broke, and the ref didn't stop it. Like in Brazil, you know, the broken arm isn't going to stop a fight. You have to tap. Like it's serious, and that fight's on YouTube, so you can go watch that fight and check it for yourself. But I'm very sure he breaks his arm. So yeah, looking at his debut against a guy who's on this card, Alonzo Menifield, it was a pretty terrible debut. You know, looked like he could maybe get a takedown at one point. Was making Alonzo work for it a little bit, but every moment there wasn't a grappling exchange. You know, like you said, he was just plotting forward and he was eating strikes, and the TKO was always coming in that round. And yeah, I wasn't too surprised. So, you know, looking at this fight, it's a tough one to predict because if you're going to take Moreira via sub, you have to trust his wrestling, you know, and he's a jiu-jitsu practitioner, not a wrestler, and that's why he didn't get the sub against Menifield because he doesn't wrestle. You need to wrestle to get the takedown unless you're going to somehow end up taking that back on the feet, you know. So it's a bit of a tough one. I agree with you, but I have to be confident in Eric Anders here. Like, you're 3-4 inside the UFC now. You've always had trouble with footwork, with the guy circling on the outside. You can't seem to close the door, and I've said that so many times on this podcast for him now, and it's still an issue. You look at his last fight against Khalil Roundtree. Khalil Roundtree looked like a guy possessed, trained in Thailand, and those Muay Thai kicks were unbelievable. You highlight a 10-7. I'd have to agree there. You know, if there ever was a 10-7, it was Eric Anders against Khalil Roundtree. The only positive you could really give Eric Anders in that fight is, you know, he was knocked down like 3 times in one round and he just wouldn't quit. Like,
So
and
again,
that's
this is his number one attribute. When I say I didn't know his strength, that is it.
yeah, like that. It's not a good positive to take, but
No.
you know, that's not going to happen here. He's not going to be beat up here the way he was in his last fight. The question is, does he stop takedowns and impose his will on the feet? And I'd have to assume he does. If he loses here, I am done with Eric Anders. I won't pick him against anyone. There will literally be no breakdown from me for Eric Anders. I'll fade the fight completely because I don't know anything about Eric Anders. So I'll take him here. And I'm going to take him confidently with a round 1 TKO.
Okay. Well, these odds, I don't like these odds. Minus 350 for Eric Anders.
Okay. So the majority have to be confident. They're just trying to... Yeah. Okay. I know how people feel. Like, if you have to win this fight, there's no way you can't.
I mean, they sure are giving him a generous fight, and it's not even towards the bottom of the card. So clearly, they're sending a message they like him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we'll see. It's a very winnable fight. It's a showcase fight, I think. So, him getting a first round TKO would make sense to me, but we'll see. I mean, I don't mean to sound unsure. It's just I'm being honest with a lot of these fights. So. Go ahead and lead us into the next fight at bantamweight here.
Okay, so we have Ricardo Ramos versus Journey Newson. Ricardo Ramos, 3-1 inside the UFC. He's looked pretty good in his UFC career so far. He said before the Kang fight that he wants to be a different fighter every time he's in there. And he certainly was in his last fight. He was terrible. That's by far his worst performance.
Didn't recognize that fighter at all.
Yeah, it was just terrible, man. He didn't really offer much and, you know, finished fairly quickly. You have to... Like, I rewatched that fight and it's just like he had a massive adrenaline dump fighting in his home country in Brazil. So maybe it's the Ricardo Ramos we've seen previously in this fight. I'll be completely honest, I don't know a lot about this Journey guy. I haven't really seen a lot. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 fights. So I wouldn't be able to tell you what he's going to try to do here or what he's going to be coming with. But I can tell you Ricardo Ramos, for the most part of his UFC career, has been pretty decent. He's got some good knees, kicks. His ground and pound is pretty decent. And he can also grapple. And he also has one of the best finishes inside the UFC with that spinning back fist against Sahabi, which was a crazy finish. So yeah, Ricardo Ramos is the more experienced guy. This is his 5th fight inside the UFC. Like I said, terrible performance in his last fight. But he did say he wants to be a different fighter every fight. So maybe he's the good fighter this time. Yeah, I'll take Ricardo Ramos, and I'll give him a TKO in round number 2.
Okay, I will be breaking down Mr. Journey Newson. He is 5'5", 9-1 overall. He is kind of taking an interesting journey to get to the UFC. He had a pro boxing fight at the beginning of the year that he lost by split decision. Thank you. I was trying to just be subtle with it, but you know, if you want me to stop it,
I'm gonna, yeah. Go ahead.
Anyway, so he had a pro boxing bout at the beginning of the year, and he lost that by split decision. But he has been able to come back to MMA since then. He got a 1-minute finish with punches. So only been able to watch a couple of his fights, but he looks like overall like a pretty good wrestler, good grappler. He has some grappling exhibition experience as well. So I think that the real key in this fight for Ricardo is you can't let him Journey crowd him and clinch him. I think Ricardo establishes distance, and I'm not sure if he gets the finish or not. I'll say Ricardo takes the decision. But Journey could come in and just be the stronger, more bullying type of fighter too. So He's kind of a little bit unknown. I was only able to see so much, but I'll take Ricardo by experience and get a decision, keep the distance. He's a 300 favorite, so Journey's to plus 235.
Wow.
So
That's, to be finished the way you was in your last fight and be the minus 300. It's a little higher, but I don't know a lot about Journey, and apparently neither does anyone else.
That fight too. I'm sure. What do you think? So we'll see. I mean, again, like so far, I'm having trouble really identifying the spots I really want to hit my bets on so far, but we'll just figure it out as we go here. So I'll take us into our next fight here at 205 between one of my favorite fighters here and Paul Craig. Kidding. And Alonzo Menifield. I will never be breaking down Paul Craig, so I'll be breaking down his opponent, Alonzo Menifield, out of where? Fortis MMA. Of course, one of my favorite camps. 8-0 overall, 7 TKOs, 8 stoppages. Alonzo's looked like a beast so far. He's put away everyone he gets in there or ends up injuring them with his fists. Yeah, I think that the key to this fight with Alonzo is not to take Craig lightly, to not interact in the grappling exchanges at all. And I would not expect Craig to make it past round 2, although I've said that for the last few fights. So, and I will say round 2 TKO for Alonzo, but the luck stops here for Mr. Craig. Or does it?
Wow, nice. Okay, so Paul Craig. I'll break him down. I'll break down Paul Craig. I've got his back here. I know you don't like him, but I like him. He's 3-3 inside the UFC. All 3 wins coming via submission. All 3 losses coming via TKO. So it's one or the other with Paul Craig. And we've seen before, it can be, 14 minutes, 50 seconds, you've been beat up and you get a sub. And even in his last fight, he was trying. And I believe he had about 2 minutes left of the 3rd round. And he finds the sub. I took him in that fight. I took him against Kennedy. Recently, in his last 3 fights, he's been the same guy, pretty much. He's shooting very early, and he's shooting often. He's not looking to strike too much on the feet. And that's a decent thing for Paul Craig, because when he stands and looks to trade, he gets beat. He doesn't win a stand-up battle. Obviously the guy has some power because, he's an athlete. He's a 205er. If he lands on anyone, he could probably hurt him, but he doesn't land often. And now that he's actually looking to shoot often and looking for submissions, he's starting to pick up some wins, even against Magomed. In that fight, he didn't shoot much and still found a submission. I think that was the moment Paul Craig knew that, look, I'm not a striker, I'm purely a grappler, and that's what I have to do. Against Jimmy Crute, he lost that fight. And it's a good thing Jimmy Crute is a good wrestler, because Paul Craig, once again, he shot early and often, and he didn't switch up the game plan. He looked for the sub at, every minute of every round. And although he lost, he's continued, and that was the reason why he got the sub against Kennedy. Obviously you have to mention the IQ of Kennedy. His corner told him a lot. It was honestly like watching a kid get told off by its parents in the corner. Like, Kennedy's corner was going completely mental. So yeah, it's the same thing here. Paul Craig is going to shoot early and often, and Alonzo Menifield has to stop the takedowns. That's it. Can I take Paul Craig again here? He could do it. He could sub him. But I just think Alonzo Menifield has a better IQ, and he's extremely powerful. So I'm going to take an Alonzo Menifield via TKO in round number 1.
All right, yeah, and Alonzo's a good wrestler too. So I'd say Alonzo is better than Crute. So we'll see. Alonzo minus 300 for Alonzo.
Ooh.
Plus 230 for Mr. Craig. Plus 250 on some sites.
So if you're betting on Paul Craig again at these, big dog prices, he's pretty much a dog in every fight. At one point you may get a little excited when he gets close to a sub, but that's the only way he really wins here. He's going to shoot early and often and look for a sub. The chances of it, probably a little low, but he's proven he can do it. But I'll take Menifield here.
Yep, fair enough. We're on to 145?
55.
155 between Drew Dober and Marco Polo El Toro Reyes. I'll be breaking down Polo Reyes. 8-5 now with 60 KOs a sub. He is 4-2 in the UFC. His last win was when he absolutely pieced up Matt Frivola for a minute before putting him away. Mm-hmm. However, in his last fight, he made Damir Hazovic look like a revelation on the feet on his way to getting finished in the second round. So, and we saw how Hazovic did in his last fight. So, Polo Reyes, he's definitely a striker, has the ability to really bury his opponent with his striking on the feet. But he's also now 34. He's been through a lot of wars, at times just as outsized. I think that could be an issue here against Dober. Dober's a bigger guy, sometimes has trouble cutting to 155. And also, I think Dober mixes it up just a lot better and more effectively. And I see this looking like Camacho versus Dober. However, I think this time Dober gets a finish. I'll say a submission in round 2 for Drew Dober.
Nice. Okay, so Drew Dober, 6-4 inside the UFC. And I really like this guy. You just mentioned that fight against Frank Camacho. I was at that fight live in North Carolina. I've said that like 3 times now on this podcast. He's not a guy I pick against often. I'll be completely honest. I've picked Drew in his last 6 fights, win or lose. I'm sure it's a positive record in his last 6, but yeah, I've taken him in his last 6.
Fun fact: I'm 8-2 all time on my Drew Dober predictions, including I've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight correct. So
there you go.
Yeah,
I picked a Drew Dober fight.
Yep.
Yeah,
I haven't picked him every.
He's a good guy, man. He's a decent guy. I like him a lot. I pick him a lot. And even in his last fight, you look against Beneil Dariush, like Drew Dober looked to take him down. A guy like Beneil Dariush, who's extremely well-rounded. So looking at this fight on the feet, I think it's going to be pretty close. But the difference is Drew Dober, I believe if it is a close fight, he's going to look to grapple and look for takedowns. And you look at Polo Reyes against Damir Hadzovic, where he was taken down and beat up. He didn't really look like he had much of a ground game. Completely flattened out at one point. So that could be the difference here in this fight. Polo Reyes, obviously a very decent striker. I believe he's actually going to be longer and taller in this fight. Not by much, but like you mentioned, Drew Dober has fought at 170. So width-wise and just pure mass, he's a big guy. It's honestly a decent fight. I've been a little bit back and forth, but even when I am with Drew Dober, I end up picking him. And I just believe that could be the difference here. Just a takedown and Drew making him work in the clinch. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Drew Dober via decision and most likely a close one.
Okay. Well, again, we're not going to like the odds here. Minus 325 for Drew Dober.
That's insane.
Plus 250 for Polo Reyes. This week, it seems like all the odds are multiplied by 2.
Wait, how much was it for Reyes?
It was plus 250.
Plus 250, Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, again, like these odds, I feel like are multiplied by 2.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be about a 170 favorite, 160 favorite, maybe.
Yeah, Polo Reyes definitely has a shot there.
Wow. Polo Reyes is a guy who, when he gets in front, he tends to stay in front. When he gets behind, he stays behind. You know pretty quickly in Polo Reyes fights where he falls a lot of times. Mm-hmm. I've noticed. And, it's interesting odds, and we got an interesting fight coming up here next. Would you like me to lead in, or would you like to lead in?
I'm going to lead us in here. Okay,
Okay, stop.
so Vince Pichel versus Roosevelt Roberts. I'm going to go on record and say I'm a friend of Vince Pichel's. Since meeting him on Xbox, we've stayed in contact. Pretty much speak like every 4, 5, 6 days. Like we keep in contact every week. So I'm going to go on record and say that. Right, Vince Pichel, 4-2 inside the UFC. His two losses. If you look at both of his losses, they've come via grappling. He was slammed early on and finished. And then you look at Gregor Gillespie, a relentless wrestler who really put on a extreme pace that night. But if Vince Pichel is able to stand with guys, the real issue for Vince so far has been the grappling. But like I said, I'm a friend of his, and I can honestly say he has trained very hard for this fight. And he's just looking to get back in there and really have a decent performance. And he has a tough guy in Roosevelt Roberts. This guy looks very tough. And he seems very well rounded from what we've seen. Mostly finishing his fights via submission. So Vince is aware that Roberts will come and he will look to grapple. But having said that, Roberts is very well rounded himself. He looks to strike on the feet. One key path to victory for Vince would be, if you take a look at Roosevelt Roberts, his frame, he's got some extremely skinny legs for 155. Now, there's two guys recently that have been beat up due to having very skinny legs. Dan Hooker and James Vick. Now, most people would say Vince Pichel is no Edson Barboza. And that's true. No one kicks like Edson Barboza. But Dan Hooker was finished. When you go to the calf often and your legs are that skinny, it definitely changes up your movement, which will force you to shoot or stand on punches and really sit down on punches when your legs hurt, and that's not a good thing. And obviously, looking at James Vick, Paul Felder just brutalized the calf, and it was a beautiful game plan. So I'd expect Vince Pichel here to look to break down the legs of Roosevelt Roberts. It's a tough fight for both guys, honestly. Roberts, it is a step up in competition for Roberts. And Vince is only losing one way in the octagon, and that's really via grappling. So it's an interesting fight. I'm not going to go against my boy here. Some could say it's a biased pick. But every week I do put my money where my mouth is, and I will again. So yeah, I'm going to take Vince Pichel here to get a round 3 TKO on a Roberts that's a bit beat up to the legs.
All right. I will be breaking down a Roosevelt, the Predator Roberts. The 24-year-old is 6'1", fights at 155, leaning to those skinny legs for sure. 8-0 overall, 3 TKOs and 4 submissions. He went the distance in his last fight. He's a Dana White Contender Series winner by rear naked choke. I like this kid's skill set a lot. I think he's been really relaxed and confident so far in his fights. He definitely looks to be the part of a UFC athlete, and I've really been looking forward to what this kid could do since I saw him on the Contender Series. He's got really good wrestling. He's got good kicks. He goes for the sub, and he's comfortable striking. He's comfortable in the clinch with regards to his strikes. So basically, I really like how this kid's frame works for the weight class. I like this matchup for him. I think Vince is been away for a little while here, and so we'll see how he comes with his game plan and everything. But we very well could be looking at a real contender here in Roosevelt, and a new school kind of MMA guy here. He's been training MMA since I think for the last 10 years, he said, or so. So I just think he's the kind of guy who's going to get better with each fight in there for a little while here. And I think that while Vince is the best guy Roberts has ever faced in his career, I think he's going to raise the level. And I'll take a second round TKO for Roosevelt Roberts.
Nice. Okay, that's a fair disagreement.
Yeah, I think it's a good fight. and I'm glad it's not coming on short notice for either guy, and we can see them both at their best. Looking at the odds, it's minus 255 for Roosevelt. So I was expecting that to say minus 355 with how crazy these odds are.
Mm-hmm.
So minus 255 plus 215 for Vince. So
Wow.
I don't disagree with the odds too much, but
Yeah,
then
man. Some of these odds are crazy. Like Polo Reyes in the twos, Vince Pichel in the twos. I can't imagine this is going to be like a big favourite night because we look at all of these fights and we don't look at the odds before the fights, and we're a little bit, we're making picks, but they're not extremely confident picks. Some weeks we have very confident picks.
it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to say if I'm not shocked by these odds just because I've been reading off 300 odds after odds. That now I see it mid 200s. I don't think it's shocking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it should maybe be closer to 2, but I think Roosevelt should be a decent favorite. I do think he's the better fighter, and I think Vince is, this is one of Vince's toughest fights in the octagon also. It's just happens to be against a guy who's only 8-0, so he's a little unproven still.
Yeah, well, Vince just has to be prepared. Look at the grappling from Roosevelt Roberts. The guy looks for submissions, and Vince has only lost one way. So he's, there comes a time when the Diakisi effect kicks in. You lose one way, and if you lose that way again, and there comes a point where when you stop that way and you're able to fight your fight. So it's really one or the other here. Vince Pichel is able to stop the grappling, beat up the legs, or Roberts is able to have a good stand-up battle and look to be able to clinch often. It's a good fight. I'm with my boy, you're with your boy. The odds, a little crazy, but decent fight. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to see Vince fight. But yeah, decent fight. I believe that's only our second disagreement too.
Yeah, I know. We're keeping it very civil. I learned my lesson last week getting swept. So, yeah, best of luck to everybody, obviously. But shout out to Vince. I think that there aren't a lot of guys looking to take this fight with Roosevelt right now. So
he was looking to fight Dan Hooker, I believe. And they just said Roosevelt Roberts. He was more than happy to step in there with him. So credit to both guys, and that's good. And I'm really appreciating that fight is on the main card as well, because that's a really good fight.
Yeah, I agree. So that leads us on to our next fight here at 170 pounds between the ageless one and Damian Maia and Tony Rocco Martin. I will be breaking down Damian Maia. He's 26-9. He's coming off a sub in under 3 minutes against the veteran on a roll coming up from 155 in Lyman Good. And his next opponent here is a veteran on a roll coming up from 155 in Tony Rocco Martin. Now, I'm not using complete MMA math here, but this is definitely one of my most intriguing fights of the night. Not saying it's necessarily going to be the best fight of the night, but this is one I've thought about a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on it. And I'll try to get them out in somewhat of a coherent way here. So I think if Maia's able to get a hold of anybody, particularly if he gets a hold of your back, you're done, or could be done very easily. I think that Martin's going to be very focused on good footwork, circling to avoid the clinch work, and I think Tony will realistically be looking to put him away with strikes, and I do think Tony has the power to do so, and at least the power to get Maia's respect. But I just got Maia to get one of those submissions, man. I just have a feeling. I'm not sure it comes even in the first round or second round. I think it could be a third round sub, but I have a hard time picking a round, but I just got Maia by submission. Okay. Somehow, some way. Almost 42 years old.
Okay, so Tony Martin comes into this fight 8 wins, 4 losses inside the UFC. Previously a lightweight, like you mentioned, stepping up to 170. And in my opinion, so far at 170, he's been very, very good. His wrestling looks stronger. His cardio looks great. His circling movement is beautiful to watch. And even getting his first TKO inside the UFC at 170. He's looked very, very good, I'll be honest. Even in his last fight against a veteran, Moreira, I believe, Moreira.
Yep.
He just beat the calf up. He beat the calf up, and like I said in my last breakdown, when you beat the calf up and go to it often, especially in round one, the fight becomes yours slowly. You know, the movement is very different. So yeah, that's what he did in that fight, and the movement was very compromised, and he just ran away with that fight. So looking at this fight, you look at Lyman Good and Damian Maia, and I took Lyman Good in that fight. Uh, the thing is, if you fight a guy like Damian Maia, and I mentioned the jiu-jitsu practitioners of the world earlier on, Damian Maia is 10 out of 10 jiu-jitsu practitioner. He is great. We all know about Damian Maia. Um, Anything he does on the feet is looking to set up grappling you. You know, he's looking to grapple you. He wants to submit you. Now, Lyman Good froze up. He froze up in that fight with his back to the fence. If you're facing a guy like Damian Maia, that's the very, very last thing that you can do. When you become stationary against the fence, he is going to cling onto your ankle. Okay? Your ankle. He's going to shoot for your ankle. He will shoot so low to grab a hold of that ankle, which sets up the rest of grabbing you, you know? So it's, you know, looking at Tony Martin, I mentioned how good he's been circling, and I wouldn't expect different here. If I had to bet on if Tony Martin froze up, I would bet he wouldn't, you know? So it's one or the other. Tony Martin here, just being in there with such a high level grappler in Damian Maia, you know, it can play minds on you. This is a mental thing here for Tony Martin. So if it gets to him and he freezes up, Damian Maia will sub him. If he keeps circling, implementing the calf kicks and the straight jabs, I could even see in this looking like Damian Maia versus Tyron Woodley. I really can. You know, I see him stuffing 6, 7, 8 takedowns if his movement is on point. It's one or the other here. If Tony Martin freezes up, Damian Maia will get a hold of him. If Tony Martin doesn't freeze up, I see him running away with a decision. So it's a tough pick. I'm going to take Tony Martin to be able to move and run away with a decision.
Okay. I mean, we could be looking at a fight similar to Paul Craig with Menifield.
Exactly. Even Eric Anders and Moreira.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a few fights on here. Vince Murdock could look kind of, you know, to stick. There's a lot of different guys on here, but yeah, I just can't go against Maia. That I went against him with Good, and that just yeah, I just could see Maia getting. I could see Martin being a little too confident in his own grappling, and you know, just maybe taking it for granted that Maia can get a hold of him. We go to the odds, and it's minus 170 for Damian Maia, plus 145 for Martin. So first fight of the night, I actually agree with him.
That's very fair.
Yeah. Finally, they got one right. Good for them for not making my 350 favorite. I was afraid to look. Okay, yeah, you want to lead us into this next fight?
Yes.
Really good,
very good co-main.
Still alive.
Okay, so Juicia Formiga versus Joseph Benavidez. Okay, so JoeyB comes into this fight 14 wins, 3 losses inside the UFC. He's 27-5 overall in his whole career, and he's only lost to 3 guys. He's lost to Dom Cruz twice, he's lost to Demetrius Johnson twice, and he's lost to Sergio Pettis. And I took Pettis in that fight, very close fight. So yeah, these guys have fought before 6 years ago, and I believe that was a #1 contender fight 6 years ago, and now 6 years on, potentially #1 contender fight for both guys again. So, you know, a little bit of evidence that the division is maybe dead, but not thinking too much about the division and the actual fights. There's good fights at 125. I still enjoy watching flyweights fight, but the division does need a little bit more. Decent fight once again for both guys. If I'm looking at the fight on the feet, Juicia Formiga doesn't really throw too much. He throws single strikes, and I don't think that's going to be enough to outpoint JoeyB. Obviously, we know about his grappling credentials. He's looking to grapple with you. He basically backpacked Sergio Pettis for the whole third round, which was absolutely hilarious. JoeyB is, still one of the best 125ers in the world. Very well rounded. He's got power. His IQ is very good. He's got combos. His wrestling. Cardio maybe slowed down a little bit, but still very decent. It's a decent co-main, and if the 125 division is getting some criticism, these are the fights you have to just make. You just have to go all in on the highest ranked guys fighting each other at this point. And it's a decent rematch. I'll take JoeyB because I just don't think Juicy Formiga has enough on the feet for him. So JoeyB via decision.
Fair enough. I will be breaking down Juicy Formiga de Silva, playing out of ATT. He is 23-5, 10 subs, 0 KOs. He's 9-4 in the UFC. Has a win over Figueiredo in his last performance, where he really neutralized Figueiredo with his grappling. We know with Formiga, he's a world-class grappler. That's where he needs to get this fight. The real question is his matchup is about Benavidez for me. It's how hungry he is to keep kind of climbing the ladder and then not having the opportunity to reap in the benefits, whether it's the guy going up in a division or him losing a fight he shouldn't lose. But Benavidez has just made this climb and then fallen and made the climb again so many times without becoming a champion. So that's my real question here. And I'm not sure where he's really at. I'm not sure why I'm doing this, but I'm taking Formiga by decision. I think he's going to dictate where this fight goes. I think that his striking is not going to be what gets him the win in any of his fights at this point. He knows what he is, and I think this is the night of the grapplers for me in a lot of these fights. Sorry, not for Paul Craig, but a lot of these other fights, I'm taking the grappler, and I'm going to take the grappler in this one to get vengeance on that loss 6 years ago, and he gets a decision win, and maybe is next in line for an interim title shot, because I think Cejudo is going to be done for a while at one point. I'm not sure what. I won't even predict that, but yeah, I'll disagree with you. I'll take Formiga by decision. And going with the odds, I believe this is my first underdog I'm taking tonight.
Okay.
So yes, indeed it is. So this is the first underdog for me that I'm first, and I believe only underdog I'm taking on the night. Oh, well, Ribas too, but I'm not counting that. So Formiga is the plus 150 underdog, minus 185 for JoeyB.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it seems a bit fair.
I think that should be like minus. It's slightly over, but not compared to a lot of these fights.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, his conditioning has slowed down a little bit. You look at the last fight against Dustin Ortiz, and the third round came, and Dustin Ortiz, man, he's got some crazy conditioning.
And I think Ortiz was way hungrier in that fight, and I think Formiga also is going to be really hungry. Formiga looked really sharp in his last fight against Figueiredo.
And I was really, really high on Figueiredo. And I still am. I'm looking for... he has a fight coming up against Pantoja, so that's a really good fight.
It's a great fight. But speaking of great fights, let's move into the main event of the evening, and I'll let you lead us off, because Black Magic is back.
Black Magic is back, baby. Okay, so main event. You look at the last few main events, we've had a lot of dogs. Does the streak continue here? I'm just looking to watch this card, man. I'm excited. The UFC's back. We've got weeks and weeks and weeks of the UFC, and this is a really good main event. Francis Ngannou versus JDS. I'll be breaking down Francis. Comes into this fight 8 wins, 2 losses inside the UFC. And I'm sure everyone listening, we all know about Francis Ngannou. He is a powerhouse. And I took Stipe to beat him in that fight, and the blueprint was written that night. You avoid the big shots, and you look for takedowns. You look to go round by round, and you're gonna take over the fight. His conditioning isn't great, grappling isn't great, and if you can avoid the powerhouse, then you're in for a chance. After that fight, you look at the Derek Lewis fight, which was absolutely terrible. And just, it looked like Francis Ngannou was just on the down. He just looked like a man completely lost his confidence, just looked scared in there, in his own head, and he was on his way down. And then you look at his last two fights. You look at Curtis Blades, where, okay, we know how we're winning again. And then you look at Cain Velasquez, and it was the same thing. His confidence really does look like it's back. And most people watching the Cain Velasquez one, we all pretty much went, oh, his knee blew out. And then you see the replays, and then you rewatch it about 10 times. And you understand that Francis Ngannou is a powerhouse. He caught him with a very short, powerful uppercut, which rocked Cain Velasquez. And when you're rocked, you stumble. And unfortunately, Cain Velasquez is injury prone, and he stumbled onto a weak knee. So it wasn't the knee, it was the uppercut that caused you to stumble on the knee and dislocate your knee.
That one twisted his ankle.
Like, it was the uppercut. Straight off the bat, big, powerful uppercut. So yeah, you look at this fight, and I'd have to go off of the recent Francis. It looks like his confidence is back. He knows he's the bigger guy here. He's the longer guy here. He's got far more power here. And if I was to make a case as to why Francis Ngannou is going to TKO JDS, it would just be JDS has had a lot of fights in the UFC. He's had a lot of wars, and the chin has been tested an unbelievable amount of times. Now, if I was to make a case for JDS to win, it would be, okay, it's the third, it's the fourth round, and you're still here somehow. You're still here, and you are winning a conditioning battle. So maybe outpoints him late on, and looks to maybe even get a TKO on the mat, maybe even get a TKO on a tired Francis. But I just don't see it happening. I look at JDS against Stipe in the second fight, and he just didn't look like he wanted to He just didn't look like he wanted to fight. He went to the calf really early against Stipe, and Stipe was on the Rogan podcast and basically said to Rogan he had the deepest tissue bruising from the calf kicks, and he knew he had to stop the fight, so he came forward with basically one leg, and he still got the TKO. JDS just didn't look like he wanted to get hit. He was just more defensive. Even though the calf kicks landed, he was more defensive. And he has been on a good run. He's on a 3-fight win streak, so maybe his confidence is back here. Both guys look like they have confidence back here, so it's going to be a really interesting main event. But I'd have to stick here with Francis Ngannou, because he's a scary, scary man, and I think he connects in round one and gets a round one TKO.
All right, I will be breaking down Junior Cigano dos Santos. He is 34, so he's not 40. He is not 48. He's not. I get it. He's had some wars, but a lot of the talk online is making JDS seem like he's a skeleton. And also, I've heard a lot about everybody saying that Francis needs to be judged on his recent performances, and that a lot of the narrative that I've been seeing with regards to people who aren't picking him is that they're judging Francis based on the Stipe fight and the inactivity against Derek Lewis. Yet Junior Dos Santos doesn't get judged on his last 3 fights by a lot of people, two of which have been finishes in the second round. But anyways, I just think it's kind of interesting, the overall narrative, and who's gets judged on their recent performances and who doesn't. Dos Santos is 21-5 overall. He's got 15 TKOs. He's 14-4 in the UFC. He's looks to be back. He had a second round TKO of Derek Lewis. Before that was a second round TKO of Tai Tuivasa. He did have a rough stretch over those 8 fights where he was alternating wins and losses. Had a pretty brutal finish against Cain Velasquez. JDS was putting himself in quite a bit of danger against Tai. But I do think that with his performance against Derek Lewis, he showed that he's able to be the much smarter, quicker, more intelligent fighter. And takes the first round to kind of take a lot of the gas off his high-octane opponent in Derek Lewis, and in this case, Ngannou. And I think that JDS implements a lot of leg kicks in this fight, early and often. He's not afraid of getting taken down by Ngannou. They cannot be naked, because if they are, you could see Ngannou coming right up the middle with a counter shot. And by no means would Francis KO in round one shock me, but I think after round one, those live odds go with JDS each round. I think the head movement of Francis could be exposed. I think that JDS could look to take him down even. And I'm going to take JDS to not get a second round TKO, but a third round TKO in this fight. And I think that experience is a big difference. I think that cardio is going to be a big difference, movement overall. And I think the power is definitely with Ngannou. And I think that may make JDS a better fighter in this fight. I won't be shocked by a first round TKO, but anything other than that for Ngannou would honestly surprise me.
I'll go along with that. Yeah. If I see Francis get a TKO outside of round 2, if he doesn't get a TKO round 1 or 2, but then finds one later on, that's a little surprising from JDS, but it's a completely understandable disagreement. It's a really good main event, and that's 5 disagreements.
Yeah, and hopefully I do better than last week, which I got 0 for 4. But yeah, if Ngannou gets a 4th round TKO, my stock of him will go up significantly. Yeah. If he gets a championship round TKO or any sort of finish, even a decision that doesn't look like Derek Lewis, obviously, but I will be really impressed. So,
and I'd have to assume that since the Stipe loss, he's only practiced at grappling, because if you look in the Derek fight, he was just waiting, like waiting for what, Francis, to grapple? Like, so I could only assume he's practiced.
I don't think JDS has to grapple to win this fight. I think he'd be wise to, but I think he can win a straight up stand up fight with Ngannou.
He's very good with his movement, and his boxing is very good.
Yeah, he's going to be quicker, and I do not pick JDS fights great. I am 2-5 in JDS fights.
Wow.
So
let me check what I am real quick. I can't do it on my laptop, man. How do you do this?
Yeah, I just happen to have it right up in front of me, and I'm I'm 3-3. Sorry, or 3-4. Sorry,
decent.
3-4, and still not great, but yeah, I'm taking JDS here. I picked Tai Tuivasa against him though, so
I picked JDS that night.
Yeah, I picked Tai Tuivasa in that fight. I'm not sure what I was thinking, but either way, Black Magic is fully on. So
and where are the odds?
Most likely JDS is getting starched, and the odds are Francis Ngannou -275.
Okay, so there's your second underdog for the night.
I'm talking about after the first round, it is pick'em. Like, insane to me. Plus 215 for JDS, and I can't understand how they're that skewed, but I love it. So because JDS,
for anyone who bets regularly, maybe the live in play here is the one to go. Maybe watch those first 2 or 3 minutes of JDS and see how he's coping, and maybe
that's 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, and then take that bet if it's good odds. But yeah, it's a really good main event. It's a disagreement, and your fight of the night.
My fight of the night would have to be the main event if I believe it goes the way I'm expecting it to.
Okay.
So I'll say the main event.
I'm gonna say maybe Drew Dober and Polo Reyes is a very fun fight, or maybe like Vince Pichel and your boy Roosevelt Roberts. That could be a fun fight too. So yeah, one of those two for me. But even the main event, if it goes outside the first round, I'd love to see how, because Francis Ngannou is a scary man with extreme power, and JDS has taken extreme damage. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, there's some quietly relevant fights on here. For instance, Ngannou, JDS is close to a #1 contender fight. For me, Benavidez would be if there was a division that was like operating. Damian Maia and Martin, the guy who wins that fight takes the next step up into that kind of area where he's becoming close to a contender again. or for Maia, close to a contender for a first time for Martin. Pichel and Roberts, you got a new potential prospect. I mean, Menifield, up and down. There's some good fights on here, and then there's the bottom of the prelims, which I'll just not say anything about. But that's okay because we never know when the fight of the night is. You gotta watch every fight. So thank you for everybody for listening. Appreciate everybody making it through those plugs and everything at the beginning. And enjoy the fights. We appreciate the comments. Don't forget to enter the giveaway for a free year of ESPN Plus or Fight Pass, your choice. Just the 5 fights with round and method of victory. Main event's got to be included. And other than that, enjoy the fights, and we'll be back the following week. The Contender Series is dark, but we'll be back for the UFC 239, Jones Santos, Nunes, Holly Holm, Masvidal, Askren, and Rockhold makes his return as well. So that's on July 6th. So we'll see you there for UFC 239. But other than that, enjoy the fights, and I appreciate you all. I'm out. Peace.
Yep, appreciate you all, guys. Peace.